The NFL Week 2 has concluded, and it was a doozy of a week. We have so many different topics that we're going to cover, ranging from the Saints absolutely shredding the Cowboys, the Cardinals shredding the Rams, Baltimore falling short to the Raiders in a shocking game. There's a ton going on. It was such a fun week, albeit it was a crazy week, and we got a lot right, we got a lot wrong, but nonetheless, it was fun. It was awesome, and there's so much that I feel like that we learned from this past week that we can carry over into the rest of the season. BJ, before we get into it, man, how we doing?
I'm good, man. It was a wild week in the NFL week 2, and I mean, we said last week you can't tell what's going to happen the rest of the season just by week 1. But like some of these teams, I'm like, really, they did it again in week 2. So we're
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about it, go through all of it, and we'll see what the rest of the season entails.
yeah. There were some carryovers from week 1 that kind of surprised me. Then there was, of course, some uh, a little bit of regression to the mean for some teams, coming off of a surprising week 1 victory or loss. But we'll cover that nonetheless. Beach, let's start from the top. The Saints, Clint Kubiak, absolutely torched. He went scorched earth on the Dallas Cowboys at AT&T Field. And not only did he do this in week 1 against the Panthers, who we kind of just wrote it off because the Panthers, let's face it, they're not a good football team. But the Cowboys at least have a somewhat respectable defense, albeit the secondary, they came into the season shaky, but they kind of proved that they were very shaky on Sunday. But I mean, at least they have like a amazing defensive front that could not get to the quarterback in Derek Carr on Sunday. Clint Kubiak took care of business. This team looks so different from last year. They look so different than what we expected coming into this year. They're utilizing all of their weapons in the best ways. Alvin Kamara had a day with 4 touchdowns on the ground. Rashid Shaheed, another deep ball, huge for our fantasy teams. And Chris Olave finally got back into the mix. This team is not what we expected. What's your snap reaction to this? Do you kind of put more weight to the Saints? Do you take away from the Cowboys? I mean, I'm having a hard time here. Are the Saints a legit contender?
And I can't believe it. I can't. And we said it at the beginning of the year that nothing has changed except for Clint Kubiak, and like you said, it looks completely different, and it's pretty incredible. I do want to point something out though. I've your take on this. Derek Carr only completed 11 passes, and they scored 45 points. So there were a lot of deep balls, and you have to wonder, is that the scheme now where they're drawing the defenders up and then going deep with Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave, and then Kamara just going nuts? So I'm curious your take on that. Is that an outlier?
It might be, but I will say I think Kubiak is scheming up a phenomenal game, or phenomenal offense just in general, kind of exploiting the mismatches where he can find them. So I think it's a mix of both. And what I mean by that is the Cowboys, if you're going to attack them, you're going to attack them deep into their secondary, where their core box on the defensive side of the ball is really their strong suit. And you have guys like Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs who, on the surface they like statistically look good, but in reality they're not that good.
Yeah.
Now, the Saints are running on a really, really insane streak of efficiency. They're leading the league by a wide margin in EPA per play generated. So a lot of that has to do with scheme, but I do think they'll regress to the mean a little bit. But even if they do, they're still going to have a wildly efficient offense with the way that they're drawing up plays right now. And I think that this offensive scheme is now utilizing players in a way that the last one didn't.
Yep.
And Derek Carr is kind of like, it's almost like it seems simplified for him, and that's what he needed. He only has to go to where his coach schemes him up to, instead of, I think he was an over complex offense last year where there was just too much going on, and then he ended up just checking it down constantly. So
Yeah, he sucks.
I think, as counterintuitive as it sounds, I think that the Saints rolling back this offense, they're really like fixated on the play action and taking advantage of the mismatches with their wide receivers deep in the secondary, which is perfect. That's what I want to see out of more teams. So I think it's, a little bit of both, but man, statistically, this team is firing on all cylinders, both in the run game and the pass game. It's awesome. Now, For those who watch us regularly, thank you. We love you, first of all. But two, we've been hammering Mike McCarthy since the day he was hired. So I kind of want to take a victory lap right now against everybody who is in the comments complaining about how much we hate on the Cowboys. We don't hate the Cowboys. We just hate Jerry Jones and the guys that he chooses to hire. Mike McCarthy is a dolt. I think that he got lucky with the one Super Bowl he won just because of his GM plus Aaron Rodgers. Mike McCarthy needs to go. I don't think they'll ever make it to the big dance with Mike McCarthy. No. I mean, this team is built to make it. They have the players. Albeit this year, they're honestly a step back from what the team that they were last year and the year before that. But it's there. You just need a coach to do it. A coach can change everything. Look what Clint Kubiak did to the offense.
Yeah, they're extremely top. Yeah, agreed. They're extremely top heavy on the offensive side. We talked about before, like, this team will go as far as CeeDee Lamb will take them, right? Because he's like their only guy, and their problems is they can't run the ball and they can't score in the red zone. They can't score touchdowns in the red zone. Like, they're fine. They can throw the 30, 40-yard ball, but when they're inside the 20s, they can't get it done. And so that's a huge problem. Huge problem.
I am terrified of the Saints in the NFC South.
Yeah.
As a Falcons fan, because now they just, especially with the way that the other teams are playing, it's just the NFC South, I think, is one of the divisions that I may have gotten the most wrong. I mean, it looks like. Now, that may be an overreaction from week 2. We'll find out more tonight when the Falcons play the Eagles. But the Bucs look great. The Saints look great. Panthers, we kind of knew that. But the Falcons are shaky, so there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Saints fan. So,
that's true.
Good stuff. I think they're going to be in the mix well more than what we thought from last year. Baker Mayfield and the Bucs went to Detroit, and I don't want to say manhandled the Lions, but in a lot of ways that they did. They controlled the clock. They controlled the time of possession. They ran the ball when they wanted to run the ball, and Baker Mayfield was controlling that game at will, it felt like. Not much in the score box, but he did rush for a couple touchdowns and then pass for one as well. This team, the Lions, Beach, are you panicking or are you not too worried? Do you think they'll get it back to track? Because I have a few words on how this offense is operating right now and a couple things that I wish to change. But first, let me hear your reaction.
I mean, I'd panic based on what they've looked like so far compared to last year. I'd definitely panic, especially with Amon-Ra St. Brown going down. And I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I mean, it just doesn't look the same. And I know that they mishandled the clock at halftime and they weren't able to get a field goal off. And that was pretty big. The score being, what was it? 3-point game? I think it was a 3-point game. So, but I can be the first one to say that I was wrong about the Bucs. I mean, I know I said I needed to see the new OC in here and to know that it wasn't just Canales, but now Canales has the worst team ever, the Panthers, and Baker's still a kingmaker. So, hey, I don't know, man. But the Bucs look good. And Godwin being in the slot a lot more is really nice. So, yeah.
Yeah.
They're looking good.
The Lions, I think they'll be fine long term if they make some adjustments. And what I mean by that is they have the pieces that they need. We've seen them be a top caliber team. Look at what they did last year. What I'm concerned about is the game plans. Like, they're very stringent on their game plan coming into the game. They wanted to run the ball a lot, and they tried, and they were very unsuccessful. And I thought that they should start attacking the Bucs passing game more on the back end early and often and leveraging a lot of play action, but they just couldn't make that happen. Even the plays that they did try to do that, a lot of their success came on third down. So they were pulling out their best plays and their best tricks on third down. They were finding success on third down and moving the ball. But get this, they had 8 drives in scoring range. They had 6 drives in the red zone where only 1 yielded in a touchdown. You got to capitalize better than that, especially against a Bucs secondary who is operating with second and third
starters. 3 starters were not playing in that game.
Yeah.
3 in the defensive backs.
So it's like between the 80s, between the 20s, the 80-yard football team, great. They were doing really well. They were operating really well. Not overly efficient. They were kind of on par in terms of EPA margin comparatively to the rest of the offenses, but they couldn't capitalize. especially on the early downs. I was just very disappointed with Ben Johnson in this offense and what they kind of had drawn up for this game. They were not very flexible. They didn't change, based on what their opponent was doing as well. They were very stiff. They didn't do a lot of crazy. They didn't make any adjustments coming out of halftime. So disappointed in the Lions. I would be slightly concerned, but I think this team is good enough, administratively speaking, that they'll be just fine down the road as well. So
it was Jared Stink came out, and it was a domed game at home, and Jared Stink is back. One more injury that I want to point out about the Bucs is that Rashad White hurt his groin. And Bucky Irvin looked pretty good. Now Rashad White is a super inefficient runner on the ground, and who knows if Bucky Irvin can get something going. This could be a team even better than what they already are. So they look great so far. Start of the season.
Yep. So Bucs and the Saints, surprise NFC South teams that might be a force to be reckoned with, from what it seems like. So put that on the list of things we did not expect heading into 2024. Okay. Before we move on, guys, this show is brought to you by Not Beer, American Sparkling Water. It is never a bad time to have a Not Beer. You can enjoy it outside with your buddies, on the boat, at the beach. It's just great refreshment. It goes with anything. You can mix it with anything, or you can drink it outright. Make sure to find the links in the comments for a store locator, or on Amazon. You can just have it shipped directly to your door. Not Beer, American Sparkling Water. Never a bad time to have one. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe, and then comment your biggest takeaways from week 2. We love scanning the crowd for that information. So much that happens. We could miss something, or you guys could have another insight. Just let us know. Drop it in the comments, and we'll try to respond to that. Okay. My next thing I wanted to talk about, Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. went scorched earth on the Rams. And I don't think they get enough credit for that, because the Rams, first of all, on the offensive side of the ball, the Rams are depleted. So not surprised that they kind of stymied them. The Cardinals defense stymied them. But the Rams defense is actually really good. All things considered, they're an underrated unit. There's not a lot of names that you would recognize on that defensive unit, but it's a great unit nonetheless. And Kyler Murray just had a field day. And it was awesome to watch, because you really get the sense that Cliff Kingsbury, or at least we did, we've talked about it in the offseason, he was kind of a fake shark, and he really wasn't utilizing the talent that he had with Kyler Murray and all of the weapons on the perimeter. And so we kind of saw that come to fruition, and it was just kind of a beautiful thing to see, especially after Marvin Harrison had a dud week to open up the 2024 season. He got coined Mazda Marv. I think he's earned back his status of Maserati Marv.
That's right.
Some good things.
No more Mazda.
What's your takeaway from this Cardinals team? Do you think that they can be a solid enough force to make a push in this division? Or do you think we kind of see some volatile games up and down here? What do you think?
I think they could make a push in this division. I think that I wasn't able to watch the whole game, but there were a lot of off-script type of balls that Kyler threw getting out of the pocket, and Marv been able to get open down the field. And, I mean, they just got, even down to, like, Greg Dortch, you can get open. Maserati Marv, Trey McBride, James Conner, able to run the ball. Defense isn't very good, but they can create, and they really put on a show, and it was really exciting to watch. It's what we wanted to see, so I'm happy that it's come to fruition that way. But yeah, I mean, if they're able to score at will like that, then it's gonna be difficult to stop.
Yeah, I mean, they were having a field day on this defense. They had a 50% overall success rate, which is phenomenal, comparatively speaking to the rest of the league. 0.3 overall EPA per play, which is up there, top 5 from week 2. So a lot to be excited about. I think this team is actually going to be even a little bit better. We, in the offseason beach, we talked about the Cardinals being one of those teams where they may not win a whole lot of games, but it'll feel like they took a huge step forward compared to where they were last season.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see that shed some light a bit earlier than we even anticipated. So that's kind of big for this Cardinals team, getting their confidence on the offensive side of the ball. And this defense, I mean, I know that the Rams were operating with virtually no offensive starters. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp Cooper Kupp went out with an ankle injury. Puka Nacua was obviously out. 3 or 4 offensive linemen were out that game, starting offensive linemen, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah.
Basically depleted in every which way. But again, it's still impressive what this team was able to do nonetheless. I think we can definitely put a bit of a boost on the Cardinals moving forward. It's a team that people are going to have to take seriously now. Not that they didn't in the past, but we know how bad the Cardinals got at the worst, at the valley of the Cliff Kingsbury era. So
yeah.
I'm excited about this team. I mean, I think this offense is going to be great. It's just a matter of their defense. Well, the defense, put them in a position to win the big ones. So I think that's the biggest question for me moving forward.
Yeah. And just to point out the obvious, the Rams are in trouble. They're not going to win any games. They're going to lose their next 5 games. Doesn't matter who they play.
That's a good point.
The Panthers.
Question to you. You're Sean McVay. You're out your 1A, 1B receiver. Cooper Kupp timetable to be determined, but Puka Nacua, what looks like he won't even be back till week 7, week 8, after their week 6 or 7 bye. What do you do? What do you do from here? Do you try to bring in guys off the street, to help out? Do you, try and take it easy and just make it to week? I don't even have a word for it. They're just going to have to make it.
Truly, this is not an exaggeration. The season looks like a lost cause week 2. All of their starting offensive linemen are out. Their 2 best skill players are out. Stafford's 80 years old. And you can't replace that. And so, no, until week 8 or 9, they're not going to have any reinforcements. So I think you just keep the guys that you got. You try to do quick passing and a lot of pre-snap motion, and hope that your defense can hold other teams. But this team isn't scoring more than 20 points for the next 5 weeks.
It's so bad.
It's gonna be so bad, really bad.
Yeah,
very unlucky.
You kind of hate it because dude, this team on the defense side of the ball, they have a very underrated unit. We know what they can be on the offensive side of the ball when their guys are healthy, but seemingly no one is healthy. We're kind of seeing the repercussions of the Rams, when they sold out for the Super Bowl some few years ago. They gave up all these draft picks. They traded away. They had a lot of dead cap space, and they just weren't able to reload to the fullest extent like some of these other teams were. So I think we're kind of feeling the effects of that a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you're Sean McVay, you almost are just at a loss. What do you do moving forward? Do you kind of tank to some degree?
You can. So they haven't had any draft picks in 3 drafts, something like that. And, you have to eventually get that capital back. And you are not going to be able to trade these old players for draft picks pretty soon. So another option for McVay would be to, I think you keep Puka. But, if a team... Who's a team I can't think of one on the top of my head that could really use a good wide receiver if he comes back healthy. If you trade Cooper Kupp right now because he's older on the older side too. If you trade him and get some draft picks, then at least you have some draft picks moving forward. Stafford's going to retire in a year or 2. So I don't know if you would do something with that. There's not a whole lot of places you can go here.
If I'm the Dolphins, I'm hitting up Stafford.
That'd be so nice.
You
could trade your whole team if you're the Rams.
Yeah,
they traded all their draft picks for a Super Bowl. Now it's time to trade your dirt old players to get draft picks. You got to start over.
Yeah, depending on the severity of some of these other injuries, I think you're broaching that territory in which you're really starting to ponder your team's future. If I'm the Rams GM, Rams owner, so very much concerned about what's going on in LA with the Rams. That's something that we're going to be watching for. We thought they were going to be not a strong team, but a 500 team this season. But now that's very much in concern with the way that their roster is seemingly shaken out. So we're going to put them on watch. We're going to put them on notice moving forward into the rest of 2024. Beach, Ravens dropped one to the Raiders, and this is a shocker. In a lot of different ways, because the Ravens, they really were supposed to be a better versions of themselves than what they were last year. Especially, I know they lost the home opener to the Chiefs, but we kind of expected, what we took from that week 1 game between the Ravens and the Chiefs was wow, okay, this Ravens team, they can be legit. They were one play away from taking that game in Arrowhead against the reigning Super Bowl champs.
Mhm.
And now they go and drop one to a Gardner Minshew-led Raiders. And I don't want to take anything away from the Raiders because that was a great win. But what kind of light do you view this in? Is this a bigger loss for the Raiders, or a bigger win for the Raiders, or a bigger loss for the Ravens? I'm curious what you think.
I think it's a big loss for the Ravens starting 0-2 start the year. If I'm the coach here, you have to change your philosophy with what you're doing. Like if I'm Monken here, because all they do, they can't run the ball. Like Derrick Henry went from a team that can't run the ball to a team that can't run the ball, and they can't run the ball. And
their offensive line is so bad.
Their offensive line is so bad
it's awful.
that like their average ADOT has to be negative. I mean, in that Chiefs game, every single pass that Zay Flowers caught was behind the line of scrimmage. So if I'm the Ravens here, I let Lamar create. I say, Lamar, you can do whatever you want because he's going to have to be getting outside the pocket anyway. And so if you can rely on your receivers downfield to make plays when Lamar's making plays, I think that's what you have to do. And the defense is not as good as it was last year. It's still good, but it's not as good as it was last year. I think you have to let Lamar create, and can't believe they signed Derrick Henry just for this to happen. But
yeah, they even faced a above, or I should say below average men in the box at 7.16. And across the league, you see teams that face, like I would say right at average is about 7.3. So what I mean by that is each rushing play, you take an average of the guys in the box and you rough it out. So they're seeing like a middle average men in the box play rate when they rush the ball. And so Derrick Henry should eat, Lamar Jackson should eat, but they're just not doing so. This offensive line is abysmal. And to your point, Lamar Jackson, I think they're making a concerted effort to not utilize him in the scramble game, like in the rush game,
keep him healthy,
to preserve him, which I get. I'm very much pro that, but at some point it's like you got to do what you got to do. His scramble percentage, this does not count design rush, but his scramble percentage is at 2.7% this past game, and we normally see like 5 to 10% out of Lamar Jackson. So I'm shocked by the performance of this team, but impressed.
I do want to.
With the Raiders.
I do want to say that the Raiders and the Chiefs defensive lines who they faced so far are above average. So
true.
So that's that. I still think you bring out 12 personnel, like all the time. I mean, it worked in the first week. Like you have Likely out there and Andrews. They can both catch balls and they can both block. So I think that's what you got to do to preserve this offensive line. But I'd be interested to see what they end up being the complete picture at the end of the season, because they have faced two good defensive lines to start the season.
Yep, that's true. And there's still a lot of season left. I'm not overreacting to this game. I am concerned with, the team that I thought that they were going to be. I thought they were going to be like a 13 win team. The Ravens were coming into this year, but it seems like the loss of Patrick Queen is really rippling this defense apart in a lot of different ways. They're not gelling like they used to. They're not holding opponents. I mean, it was Gardner Minshew, for Christ's sake. You got to do better, Ravens.
Look, hey, Brock Bowers looks good.
Brock Bowers is a dog.
I want to point that out. Brock Bowers looks great, and it's just Bowers and Devonta Adams, and the Raiders can't run the ball either. So
yeah, I know.
It's what they have.
Zamir White and Alexander Madison. So
trash.
And I mean, they, it's funny that you say that. The rushing summary for this game, the Raiders had a significantly lower success rate in EPA per rush in this game by a wide margin than the Ravens, and still won this game.
Yeah.
A wide margin. So I think it was just a lot of, I do have a fit with the way that the Ravens play football. I think they need to change their game a little bit and go a little more up pace. I think they go so slow paced that almost is counterintuitive to the game that they're trying to play with Lamar Jackson in the running game. I think if they went up pace a little bit and kind of put teams on their heels, that it would work to their advantage a lot more. But they're so slow. They play the game so slow on the offensive side of the ball. I think it does more damage to them than it does good. So worrying for the Ravens, but I'm not too concerned. I do think they bounce back over the next few weeks. Good win for the Raiders. They might be a better version of themselves than we thought as well. So Good for Antonio Pierce and company. Okay, let's talk Tua. Tua Tagovailoa goes out with a concussion against the Bills. Bills had a point to prove coming into Miami that game. I actually had Miami winning that game at Miami because of all the things I thought that their offense was going to be able to do. I didn't think the Bills would have the chemistry on offense yet. I still picked the Bills to win that division, as you guys know by the offseason AFC East show. But I chose the Bills losing this game and Miami winning this game because I thought that Miami's offense would fire on all cylinders, and I thought the Bills' offense would still take a few weeks to gel on their offensive side of the ball. But boy, was I wrong. Josh Allen went full Superman in this game again. He had a point to prove. He dominated on the offensive side of the ball, and the Dolphins just couldn't get anything going on the offensive side of the ball. And of course, we know that Tua, he went out with another concussion, so we're worried for him. But Beach, what do you think about this Bills team? What do you think about this Miami team? You know, the outlook for this Miami team as Tua like mulls over a couple of things for the rest of the season, really. So what do you think?
For me, so far in the season, I think starting with the Bills, I mean, the Bills look like one or two favorites to win the Super Bowl. I mean, they look very, very good. And, you know, like, it's interesting. Keon Coleman had like no catches in this game, but they were able to establish the run, and James Cook did great. Kincaid got back into it. I think Khalil Shakir is just good. Just point that out there.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, they just dominated. They really did. And they just, like, step on other teams' throats is really what they're doing nowadays. So, props to them. They look great. The Dolphins, in the two games they played so far, it's interesting. The Jaguars played like a too high shell so that the Dolphins couldn't go deep on them. And Bills did the same thing. Doug McDermott's a great defensive coach, and the Dolphins really struggle when they can't get those big plays off. And then you add on to the fact that Skylar Thompson's their quarterback now. This team isn't winning a game. Same with the Rams. This team is not winning a game until they trade for a quarterback. I mean, it looks so bad.
Well, okay. I'll disagree with you. I think they do win a game or two here and there. I think they're good enough on both sides of the ball to beat some of their lower ranked opponents. But I especially think so if, to your point, like you said, they trade for a quarterback or they go out and sign a guy like Ryan Tannehill. Hint, hint. We're seeing a lot of that come about.
That'd be fire.
But I do think that they could definitely make a trade, make a push for a trade as well. Now, who that is, that's still way up in the air. But there are guys out there available that I think could really make an impact, for him over the next 6 weeks, And Tua has come out and says he's not going to retire, but that still is very ambiguous and doesn't really resolve a lot of what to expect out of the Dolphins, because I'm sure that he's going to sit for at least the next month, at least bare minimum.
He should retire. He should retire.
Yeah, I won't speak to that.
He really should.
I don't think he will, but
he won't.
I'm sure he'll do what he wants to do, and now that'll be that. So
I'm not trying to be morbid, dude, but it was Damar Hamlin.
I know. It was fitting. I saw a funny tweet that Damar Hamlin's KD ratio is back to 1.
1-1. That was so funny. I love that. It's terrible. Terrible.
It is terrible.
Really funny.
It was funny. But yeah. So I still think
if they trade for Joe Flacco, they're going to the playoffs. That's all I say.
He's got one more magical run in him.
One more.
Okay. Well, moving on to a team. This one of the things that I wanted to talk about. It might not be as resounding to others, but Anthony Richardson goes into Green Bay in a very winnable game. I know going to Lambeau is hard to win, but he goes to the Packers. The Packers are down their starting quarterback. Malik Willis is the starter. Colts have they should win this game. I'll just put it plainly. They know what was going to come from the offensive side of the ball. They were going to rush the ball over and over and over. The Packers ended up with over 200 yards rushing. They did great on the ground. Malik Willis really didn't have to do much in the air. And I think this is one of those games where, we talk about Anthony Richardson as a lot of people say high ceiling, low floor. Like, his range of outcomes is so volatile that you're going to get games like this. And I think we really saw the bad side of having Anthony Richardson as your quarterback. He missed a lot of throws that he's got to make. And if he hits even half of them, I think it's a totally different ball game. But there were guys down the field on corner routes and flag routes that, dude, Anthony Richardson, you've got to make those throws. And it's, I have optimism. And the reason I say that is because Jalen Hurts had similar issues his first few years in the Eagles, and Shane Steichen somehow was able to fix them. I know that accuracy is one of the hardest things to coach and to fix. It's kind of considered intangible. But we've seen the same thing out of Jalen Hurts in earlier years as the Eagles. I'm hoping that he can mold Anthony Richardson like he did Jalen Hurts. But if he cannot, the Anthony Richardson project is really going to be in question in a lot of different ways if he can't hit those crucial throws down the sidelines and down the middle. Even, it's the inaccuracy is gonna do more hurt than his legs can do more good, if that makes sense. So, Beach, reaction to the Colts versus the Packers. What do you think?
Yeah, on the Colts side, I don't think that you panic yet, but I mean, AR was 50% completion rate, 3 picks, missed a lot of open people, and it's concerning. But I do think that he still has a lot of room to grow. He's got a bunch of room to grow. Like, he's got a huge ceiling if he can reach it, and I think that Steichen will work on him with that. But I mean, they shouldn't have lost this game. I mean, you knew the Packers were going to run the ball, and Josh Jacobs had 150 yards on the ground. So I think it was a great game plan by LaFleur. Yeah. I think that was the biggest takeaway from here, is that LaFleur really schemed up a way for them to avoid Malik Willis having to win them ball games.
Too much. Yeah, and you think about it, the Packers during the stretch, they have a relatively easy next few games. They just need to go 500 for the games that Jordan Love is out. And I think they're back in business, and so getting this one was huge for them and their playoff hopes. I think it really puts them in a good spot to be comfortable moving forward, and maybe even give an extra game to Jordan Love to sit out. But man, the Colts, they're close to figuring out their success rate. If you look at it, they were actually pretty good on first and second with a 45.5% success rate, but on third and fourth downs at 23%, that's good for one of the worst outcomes in terms of success rate on the offensive side of the ball for week 2. So their game plan, their rushing game, and their gadget plays and their quick throwing game worked well on first and second down. But when it comes to third down, when you really got to make a play or stretch the field a little bit, Anthony Richardson and company couldn't do it. And that's what concerns me. So I think Shane Steichen, as this year plays out, we got to remember Anthony Richardson has only played, I think that was his 5th or 6th full NFL game.
Right.
That. So
he played very few college games also.
True. He's still got a lot to work into. We should still consider him as a rookie to some degree in terms of games played. So I'm not too concerned, but it's got to be cleaned up. If I'm Anthony Richardson and the Colts, it's got to be cleaned up.
Sure.
That's all I'll say. Okay, Beach. Let's pack it over into the next one. Let's briefly talk about the Chiefs and the Bengals. Chiefs win a stunner on a last-minute field goal. Good for the Bengals coming in there and keeping this game close after dropping a surprising loss to the New England Patriots in Week 1. The Chiefs ended this game due to a really questionable pass interference at the end of that game to put the Chiefs in the field goal position that inevitably ended up winning them the game. There's a lot of, it's hard to not see that the Chiefs do get favorable outcomes.
Oh, yeah.
By the refs.
Absolutely.
Week in, week out. I saw an interesting stat. Patrick Mahomes has thrown the most interceptions that have been called or reversed and called back due to penalties on the defense, on the opposing team. And I'm like, it's adding up. At first I was like, you guys are just pulling shit out of thin air. Like the refs, they're obviously not in the back pocket, which I still don't think they are, but there's just too much, I think, to this point that is falling favorably for the Chiefs for me to not be like, all right, this is getting out of hand. So yeah. I'll leave it at that. But my biggest takeaway is Bengals are going to be the team. Our priors are confirmed. They're going to be good. Just like every year before this, they start slow and then they get ramped back up. So I do think we see a double-digit win season out of this Bengals team. Even though they're 0-2 to start the season, I think they're going to be just fine moving forward. I think, especially once they get T. Higgins back on the field, I'm not too concerned. Beach, what do you think?
Yeah, that's the only thing I was going to add is that they can only get a little bit better when T Higgins gets back on the field. But the Bengals are what we thought they were going to be. For me, I mean, the Chiefs should not have won this game at all.
No.
I mean, they needed a fumble recovery return in the fourth. But anyway, I digress. Isaiah Pacheco broke his leg.
He's hurt. Yeah.
Carson Steele time.
Hey,
it's my man.
Prediction. Chiefs. They bring back Kareem Hunt into the mix.
It'd be fitting. It would be. But
yeah,
I mean the Chiefs. This is the best Chiefs team they've had on offense in a couple of years. I think their weapons are a lot better. So Rashid Rice still dominates, and Kelsey's still Kelsey.
Yep. So I think not too much to take away from that. Two very good teams, very good game. I'm excited to watch both of them for the rest of the season. BJ, your Pittsburgh Steelers went to Denver and came out with a win. It was an ugly game nonetheless, but I actually spent a lot of time watching this game during the late afternoon slate. Justin Fields looks different. He looks like a better version of himself than what we've seen out of the Bears. And the reason I say that is I will still say his biggest fallacy is he still holds on to the ball for too long. But I saw I don't want to say, he's back to his prime, but I saw a version of himself that what I used to watch with him at Ohio State. He was passing the ball with confidence. He had a zip on the ball. He had an accuracy on the ball. There was a play that was called back that he hit his receiver in stride on the run down the sideline. That was like phenomenal throw. And I'm like, wow, there are maybe, 3-4 other quarterbacks that make that throw that he just made. And I'm surprised that Justin Fields was able to complete it off. Do you think the Steelers have to ride Justin Fields until they lose? Or do you think if Russell Wilson comes back healthy, do the Steelers bring Russell in?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. That's all I have to say. Because you don't have to be have to be an average quarterback in this offense in order for it to work. You don't have to be an outstanding quarterback. And I think it helps Fields because he doesn't have to make so many decisions in this offense. And this is the team that we thought it was going to be. It's going to rely on the defense, and the defense is still freaking awesome. So they're able to control the clock the way they do and Justin not make mistakes. I think you ride him until he does something crazy that you have to take him out.
True.
Yep. That's all I have to say, really.
I agree. I think you got to ride with Fields, especially with the defense playing the way they're playing, and then the offense kind of getting in a rhythm. We're seeing that they're not scoring a whole lot, but they're moving the ball. And I think that they're just, one or two plays away from being a really good offense, all things considered. So
they haven't scored over 20 yet, but they've only allowed 16 total points on the season.
Well, if you watch the games, they're so close to scoring. It's like you're kind of surprised on why they didn't score. They're close. Yeah. I think they're better offensively than people give them credit for. Mm-hmm. Denver, I don't really have much to say about Denver. They're still having a lot to figure out, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But I'm going to give Bo Nix a couple of weeks before I make any sort of conclusive decision on what I think about him and this offense, what this Denver team is going to shake out to be, because I saw some flashes of really high upside out of Bo Nix in this game, and I can't make any sort of, analysis or convicting analysis after he just faced the best defense in the league, one of the best defenses in the league. So to be determined. I don't have much to say about him. I want to get more out of him as he starts playing a little bit easier defenses, a little bit easier secondaries. So yeah, that's all I got to say.
Regardless how the season goes, I don't think you write off Bo Nix. Regardless, I think that this team is still like 2 years away from even making a playoff push. But I think you ride with them. I think that this is the best you're going to get without sacrificing like a top draft pick on another quarterback. So I think you ride with them. I do.
Yep.
They're just a couple years away.
Okay, let's talk about an ugly one. Cleveland pulls out a win at Jacksonville. Really disappointing start to the season for the Jaguars. I just, I had high expectations for them. I thought that they were going to get back to their playing really efficient offense, and their defense was going to take a step forward heading into this year. But we've seen a streak of bad luck from this team. They can't seem to put anything together. Now, granted, Cleveland, similar to, talking about the Broncos and the Steelers, Cleveland has one of the best defenses in the league. So it was a tough test, but you got to take advantage of it. And, coming like Cleveland coming into your home field, you got to take advantage of that. And Jacksonville has the weapons to succeed. We're waiting, Trevor Lawrence. We're waiting for you to have that eruption game. So I am now starting to raise the red flag for Trevor Lawrence. I don't want to throw in the towel yet. I still think he can be a very, high variance passer on the offensive side of the ball. I think he's like one step away from being a true, franchise quarterback. But I'm just not there yet. You can't beat a team like the Cleveland Browns at home. Give them credit where credit due. They do have one of the best defenses in the league, but with the other team only scoring 18 points, you gotta take the next step. You gotta do it, especially with the weapons that you have now. They went out and got you a phenomenal rookie wide receiver in Brian Thomas Jr. They went and signed Gabe Davis. You still have Christian Kirk. I know you were down Evan Ingram, but you also have ETN. Really solid offensive line. It's time to nut up and go, Trevor Lawrence. Beach, what do you think from this game?
How many more years can you say that Trevor Lawrence is one step away?
This is the last year.
It's been every year. It's been every year, pretty much.
It's the last year for me.
So it's starting to raise a red flag. It is.
Yep.
I mean, these teams are both nasty. Deshaun looked better. I really don't have a whole lot to say.
Yeah.
Their defense is still good. I am disappointed in the Jaguars. I am, but is this all they are? Is the question. And who'd they play? Who'd they play the first week? Dolphins? Yeah,
yes.
I mean,
they were up 17, and then they ended up dropping it to the Dolphins. So,
yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, I'll see a couple more games, but if they continue this, then this is all they are.
Yep. 100% agree. And then Cleveland, I mean, it's a good win going to Jacksonville, stealing that win. Hopefully that boosts the confidence of your quarterback, who's in a really bad place right now. So, we'll see more coming from the Cleveland Browns as we move on 2024 season. The last game that I wanted to cover here, I know there's a couple more games that we may have missed. The last game I wanted to cover was Texans and the Bears. Played last night. Closer game than a lot of people anticipated. The Texans offense came out firing at first. I thought it was going to be a bloodbath there for a second. Then they kind of cooled down, especially in the second half. The Bears defense really did a good job of stopping CJ Stroud and the Texans. I was impressed with Chicago's defense, especially with how poorly they were ranked last season and how poorly we anticipated them being this season. We've seen a lot of good things out of the Bears defense. So I think that's a huge boost for the Bears, even though they lost. A lot of people will complain or write off Caleb Williams based on their performance, what they saw in this game. And I'm not there yet. And the reason I say that is I think that Caleb Williams is still getting acclimated to the difference of play in college and the NFL. And I think that we see him get there eventually. There's a lot of good learning lessons from last game. He tried a lot of off-balance throws that were picked or almost picked off that I think he's going to take in, he's going to learn, and I think he's going to use that to progress and move forward as a passer, as a quarterback. So while a lot of people are, in fact, writing Caleb Williams off, I'm not ready to do so. He was able to still flash the ability to make crazy things happen in and out of the pocket. But I think he learns from his mistakes, and then he takes that and applies it moving forward in 2024. If I'm a Bears fan, I'm still excited. I know you lost. I know there was the only thing I'm not excited about is the offensive line for the Bears, because the Texans got to Caleb Williams way more than one would like for him to. But at the same time, the Houston Texans front is a freaking beast. You have Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter on the edge, dogs. So I would take that with a grain of salt. But my biggest concern is the offensive line for the Bears. But I'm still somewhat excited about Caleb Williams. Beach, takeaways from this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Caleb's fine. The Bears defense really has impressed me so far this year. The Bears are kind of banged up on the offensive side, and so that's going to be difficult. But the biggest takeaway for me is that the Texans really, really look like they can make a Super Bowl run. I mean, this defense is sick, and we know the offense is good, but 7 sacks, 11 QB hits. There's nothing Caleb Williams can do there. 7 sacks. It's freaking crazy. Like,
It's a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, this defensive unit is easily, I would say, top 5. I'm trying to think of people that would be up there also. But yeah, we know they can score. So if their defense continues to do what they're doing, then sky's the limit with them.
100% agree. A lot to be excited about. I wouldn't beat yourself too much up, Texans fans. I mean, I know you're not. You got one. A lot of people were expecting, more of a blowout than what they saw, but I think there's actually reason to be optimistic. From BJ's point, as the defense has shown much more improvement comparatively speaking to last year. They're a force to be reckoned with on both sides of the ball. Contenders, undoubtedly. Guys, thank you so much. We're wrapping up week 2. We will be back here in a few short days to do our game breakdown for NFL week 3. We have a new version of the projections rolling out as well. They went 9-6 this week against the closing spread, and I think we can get another game or two with the new projections. So we appreciate you guys. We will talk to you guys later this week.